Hello, I'm Harry, and this is a video about the Manchester Gamba book, a collection of Lyra Viol music mainly written in tablature around the second half of the 17th century. Thank you to Angel Early Music for making this video possible. In it, I'm going to talk a bit about the book, why it's important, why it's interesting, play some, hopefully a kind of sampler from it, and talk a little bit about the composers. It's been great fun to explore this collection of incredible variety. It feels almost as if the copyist was trying to find a piece for every possible occasion. There are very silly short pieces called toys, there are formal dances, there are arrangements of folk tunes, but one of the key features of it is that it's written for 22 different ways of tuning the instrument. And it's really the tablature that makes this possible. Here's an image from the book of the Lancashire pipes, the first piece I'm going to play. As you can see, the tablature system shows the rhythms above the stave, and these rhythms are only specified if the note is a different duration from the note before it. And the letters indicate how you stop the string. So A indicates an unstopped or open string, B indicates stopping the first fret, C the second, etc. The strengths of writing for tablature is that it's a notation that tells you where to play on the instrument rather than the absolute pitch that you have to play. So you can play in all these different tunings without having to relearn where the notes are. It's also useful as a historical source because whereas there might be multiple places you can play the same note on an instrument, the tablature specifies exactly which one. So this is the Lancashire pipes with a short prelude. The advantages of these different tunings are partially because it opens up the possibility of playing different notes or different shapes of chords that you might not be able to reach otherwise, but it also really changes the character of the instrument. So the Lancashire pipes has that growly bagpipe feel by drastically lowering the fourth string. And the eighths feel has this sort of bright, open, large sound. And then you get some of the sweeter sounds of the closer tunings like Lyra or harp-way sharp, in which the instruments are tuned almost as chords themselves. This is a tune called the Gillyflower by Simon Ives, just to give you a little sense of a different tuning and the different character it has. I'm playing this on a different viol, which I'll talk a little bit about afterwards. This instrument is a copy of an Italian instrument that's in the Ashmolean, made by the brothers Amati. But we do know that these instruments became very popular in England, that they're often associated with division repertoire, but they're actually recommended by Christopher Simpson, whose compositions appear in the Manchester Gamba book. Alfonso Ferrabosco was one of the finest writers of polyphony. He was an Italian composer who went to work at the Elizabethan court and had a son there. Alfonso Ferrabosco II, or Ferrabosco the Younger, shared this talent for polyphony, but was also a fantastic virtuoso viola da gamba player. He wrote perhaps the most respected collection of Lyra Viol music, right at the beginning of the 17th century. And the fact he's included in this collection so much later shows how important he still was. This is one of his rather upbeat corantos. Lyra Way. Slightly confusingly, Lyra Way is also a specific one of these tunings, as well as a way of playing, the Lyra Way, through tablature, or the specific instruments that were made to play this music especially. Yeah. The eighths tuning has this very large range, it's 2.5 octaves, and gives this incredible ringing character. So, and as I'm sure you can hear, the reason it's called the eighths is because the strings are in octaves. So these are all Ds, these are all As. This is one of the many brief and unnamed pieces in the collection. This one is by Gervais Gerard. most of the composers in this collection would have been trained in writing polyphonically, so writing for multiple lines that all do their own thing rather than a melody with an accompaniment, for example. So these composers almost enjoyed the game of creating a sense of polyphony on a single instrument in the Lyra Viol. So I think this pavan is a good example of a composition that seems to have sort of three distinct voices, high, middle and low voice, that come in and out of focus during the piece, though you also hear them together during some of the longer chordal passages. This next piece is played on a copy of a small English viol, which is perhaps the sort of instrument we most typically associate nowadays with the Lyra technique. The piece is called Whoop Do Me No Harm, and it's based on a ballad that's mentioned by the shepherd in A Winter's Tale. fitting multiple voices on the same instrument gives a kind of strange mix of verticality and horizontality in the compositions, which is actually, it's a real delight, and the rhythmic interplay that you can use to create this ends up being like a lot of fun and a fascinating way of changing the character of something that might be quite simple to something that's got a real sense of space to it. So Richard Samate's setting of the song Daphne is one of those. This instrument is usually set up as a 7-string instrument. You can see it's missing a peg, but I use this partly for the long string length and partly because 7-string instruments were often adapted from larger English consort instruments that may have also been used to play this repertoire. Viola da Gamba was old news at the time of this collection. It was being challenged by this newfangled instrument called the violin that people were very excited about. But the instrument still very much had its champions, and John Jenkins was one of these. He had to flee London during the Civil War and worked in an aristocrat's household, composing some of his smaller scale works there, but also composing music that was a direct response to the Civil War. This is his Almain. Another reason why this collection is important is because of its table of ornaments, ways of embellishing a melody. Here's the table, and you can see it's actually creates for quite beautiful scores, visually as well as hopefully musically. We know very little about the composer Gervais Girard, but his compositions are the most highly ornamented throughout the book. This is his Pavan. It's got he throws the kitchen sink at this. It's sort of every exciting, strange, shimmery technique that he can find, he seems to try and deploy it here. If you've enjoyed this, there are some fantastic other videos on Angel Only Music's YouTube channel. I'd recommend all of them really, but there's two on Viola da Gamba by Alison Kinder and Ibi Aziz. If you like music, there are some fantastic recordings of music from this collection. A couple I'd like to point out are Fernando Marine's recordings, which are available on Spotify and YouTube. He experiments with building instruments that are recreations of early Lyra, really worth looking at. Robert Smith also has a fantastic CD, and Jonathan Dumford as well has recorded a lot of this music, a really astonishing amount of 17th century solo gamba music. This last piece I'm going to play is called La Cloche by Simon Ives. I think it'll be clear why. I really hope you enjoyed this video.